Welcome to Give Me Five, ladies and gentlemen. All right, I want to show you Sean Spicer in action. I think he handles himself so well every day. He's been under attack like no other press secretary ever has been. Of course, what the media has done to him and to Kellyanne and to, of course, Donald Trump, the president, it's absurd. It's ridiculous. The Saturday Night Live skits, which I don't even watch, but I keep seeing them appearing on the sites that I go to. Outrageous. He is fantastic, and never more so than yesterday with Jim Acosta talking about Obamacare. Actually, it's 2 days ago. This is Tuesday. Acosta from CNN is trying to, tear down the replacement for Obamacare, and Spicer spells it out so cleanly and so plainly and doesn't let him get under his skin. Watch.
You were saying that people, if they can't get access to insurance, they don't have coverage. But
right.
If you remove the individual mandate, you are going to have people who are not going to buy coverage. They're not going to buy insurance. And so getting back to the Congressional Budget Office score, would you concede that there will be some coverage losses, perhaps in the millions, that there will be millions of people who will not have health insurance as a result of what you're doing?
All right. Now, obviously, of course there could be losses. That's because people will now have a choice as to whether or not to have health care. But this myth that everybody's covered under Obamacare is not true. But I'm not going to, you don't need me to explain this. Sit back, relax, and watch a pro, Sean Spicer, in action.
Sure, except you have to look at the current situation. You are mandated by law to buy insurance right now under Obamacare. 13+ million people have asked for a hardship exemption, and then 6.5+ million people have determined to pay the penalty. So currently, if we look at the universe and say it's roughly 30 million people, only 9 million people engaged in the exchanges when required by law. The majority, almost 2/3, if my back of the envelope math is right, about 2/3 have chosen to either apply for a hardship exemption or pay a penalty.
Right. So this myth that, almost everyone's covered under Obamacare, there are people who opted not to obey the law, which forces them to either take an Obamacare plan if they don't have health insurance through their employer, or pay a penalty. And you just heard the statistics from Sean Spicer. I mean, this goes virtually, totally unreported. And of course, that's fake news by omission, which is really the key to fake news. I mean, once in a while you get a false story, but fake news by omission, when you don't report the whole story, when you don't put things in context, that's the worst kind of fake news, and that's what these networks do. More.
So the mandate forces people to buy insurance, and if they don't have insurance, then you have the free rider problem in the system.
Right, but look at what's happening now.
So you have free riders, and those folks
no, because the current
they show up at the emergency room, and then the health care is much more expensive.
But they do it right now. But my point, Jim, is that the way the system was constructed under Obamacare, they created the system to force people to buy plans that they did not like, that were mandated by the government in terms of what was part of the plan, what it had to cover, the deductible, et cetera, et cetera. And yet, roughly 2/3 of the people either paid a penalty or asked for a hardship exemption. They didn't do it. And so the idea is, actually, if you could bring down cost and choices and allow people to find a plan that fit their budget, that was tailored to their needs, there's actually a higher likelihood that they will find something that they want at a price that they can afford, as to right now, which is, I get a plan that I'm forced to buy that has a deductible that I can't afford, but I've got a cute little plastic card that I can wave around.
This will get you coverage.
No, that's not true.
Yeah, okay, this is great. I mean, Spicer is explaining it so well, and this is not often talked about, and it needs to be talked about just the way Sean's explaining it. So here's Acosta coming back.
Show up at the emergency room if you've been hit by a bus.
Sure.
You're not going to be just paying out of pocket to the hospital.
But under any scenario,
you're going to have some sort of catastrophic coverage that will make sure you have insurance.
Thank you.
That's
that's a great advertisement for thank you.
But
that's exactly what the president's trying to do, because right now you've got of the attempt to get 30 million people covered, 14.5 million people applied for a hardship exam. They're exactly the people that you're talking about. Another 6.5 million people have paid the penalty and don't have it. So we have roughly 20 million people in this country who were supposed to be required to buy health care. that have chosen not to do it, who fall in exactly to the category that you're talking about.
Right. They don't have it, and if they get sick and have to go to the emergency room, that's where they're going. So Acosta is making Spicer's point. And then Acosta, well, he doesn't like that answer because he doesn't know how to respond to the answer. So what do you do when you don't like an answer and you don't know how to respond to what was just said? You call the answer a derogatory name.
That number is massive by the year 2026.
Right, and so the point that I'm getting, hold on,
Americans.
but if they actually had choices and had a plan option that was down at a budget they could afford, there is a higher likelihood that they would buy a plan that was A, tailored to them, and B, actually that they could afford. So to your question about catastrophic, right now that's in most cases not even an option. In a third of all the counties in the United States, they only have one choice. In 5 states, they have one choice. Can you imagine if they could actually buy a plan?
That talking point, but at
It's
least
not a
there is
talking
coverage.
Yeah, he calls it a talking point. It's not a talking point. It's the truth. Your questions are Democrat talking points. If not in this specific exchange, certainly your overall record of questions from the whole mainstream media. They're always echoing and mimicking each other and the talking points of the Democrats. I mean, you watch the morning shows, they all have the same catchphrases. How does that happen? It's a talking point. More?
If you pull this away, then you're going to have people in a lot of states who aren't going to have access to any
that's
coverage
not totally
because
false.
they can't afford it with
Hold
these
on.
tax credits you're providing.
No,
I mean, there's an argument to the other
No, there's
side
not.
of it.
No, actually,
The subsidies are more
you've got
generous in many cases.
175 million Americans that get their insurance through their employer. And frankly, right now, they're the ones who keep paying higher and higher premiums because a system that was only supposed to help people get access and require them get a government mandated, government run health care has actually gone amok. And so right now,
Government-run healthcare, Medicare is government-run.
right, and what's
we're not
happening?
senior citizens
and more
screaming that they
yes, they do.
want you to get rid of their
I
Medicare.
think you need to maybe get outside and talk to some of them because more and more Medicaid recipients, in fact, more and more Medicare recipients, aren't actually able to get coverage. Again, it's one thing to have a card. It's another thing to walk into a doctor's office and them to tell you, we no longer accept Medicaid anymore. That's not care.
And that's exactly what's happening all over the country. It's been happening. It's been happening. It's a system that, if left alone, as we've heard, will fail. One more.
But the president's okay with
No, he's
there
not.
are going to be millions of people who aren't going to have coverage.
The president's goal is to provide health care coverage to every American. And right now, they're not getting that. And by giving them more choices at a lower cost, more Americans can either buy health care for their family or themselves, or in a lot of cases for their business without paying the penalty, which is what a lot of them are doing, or forcing people into exchanges that have fewer and fewer choices. The system now is not working. The costs are going up, the choices are going down, and deductibles are going up. That is not an option. And for every American, and I mentioned this earlier, that to make this look like a choice, there isn't really a choice. The system that we have now is failing. The choice is whether we give them an opportunity to have real care.
And that is the goal. That is the goal. Now, am I concerned that they say people in their 50s and 60s are going to pay more? Low-income seniors are going to have to pay more with higher deductibles? That can't be the case. I mean, that's not going to work. But what's happening now is not working, and that's what the media, by omission, that's why they give you fake news.